Howdy, with this video, I want to go over MLA formatting and make sure you kind of start to understand what's going on with the MLA formatting. Before I do that, I want to go over the schedule real quickly. I'm doing this video on Friday, September 18th, so we're kind of right in here. I'll return your first two paragraphs of the career essay later today. For Monday, I'm probably going to ask you to send what you have so far on the draft, particularly hopefully you're getting started on the MLA formatting. Make sure, I want to see if you start having questions. Hopefully you can kind of start seeing how the MLA formatting works when you document sources in your research paper. For Thursday, the 24th, a draft of the career essay is due to Ms. Loopy. Make sure you follow her guidelines for that. And then on Monday, you're going to submit the draft to me. Hopefully Ms. Loopy will have those drafts back to you on Monday. You'll revise those and then send those to me one more time. And I'll mainly be looking for the MLA formatting side. Obviously, she's going to be looking at the grammar sentence structure side. And however, whatever way she says she's going to do that. And then on the final version of the career essay is due. It sounds like a long time for an essay, but trying to get the MLA formatting down and learning that, it's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take a little practice, and probably not get it perfect on this particular essay. That's why we're going to keep working with the next two essays after this one. For MLA formatting, everything I'm about to talk about is available up here on the Help Resources page, on the content page for the course. There's an MLA lecture, probably the most uninteresting thing you could ever read in your life. But if you process information better just reading it, that's a good way to kind of get the basics of the MLA formatting. It's just going to cover what I'm about to tell you. Also, on the content page, under Help Resources, you'll see a sample career essay, which we'll go over here in a little bit. And you'll also see the sample MLA medical research essay, and that's the one I'm going to use to talk about MLA formatting. It's a good example essay to work with that. For MLA formatting, it stands for Modern Language Association, and it's one of the ways we document sources in our essays and show where our research is coming from. And there's two main ideas behind MLA formatting and any other type of formatting for research essays. One, you want to credit your sources. You can't just cut and paste stuff off the internet and pretend like it's yours in your essay. That's a good way to fail a course, right? You don't want to do that. And also, you want to use sources fairly. If I say, according to Jane Smith, yada, 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 and Jane Smith didn't actually say that, Jane Smith is going to be very upset with me, and that I can probably get in more trouble than just stealing her information sometimes. So you want to, one, you got to credit sources when you use them. Two, you got to use those sources fairly. And that's what MLA formatting is all about. To begin with MLA formatting and to document these sources, we're going to start with the work status page. You'll see a lot of commentary on this sample medical essay, so you can kind of hopefully see how things are working with it. But the work status page is the last page in the essay, and what it is, it's a listing of the sources you use in your essay. And for the basic formatting on the work status page, one should be the last page on your essay, should be on its own page. It should be listed your sources should be listed in alphabetical order. You should not bullet them, you should not number them, they should be in alphabetical order. You should notice everything's double spaced once. That's true with MLA papers, except for charts and graphs, which we're really not getting into too much. Maybe a little bit with the table for the academic plan. Those might be single spaced. But everything else in an MLA paper should be double spaced once. And you should use a hanging indentation. If you have to go to the next line to create your entry, you should indent that. To do that, I already have the sample one going there. You just come up the paragraph, and you're going to come down here to indentation and click on hanging. That might be defaulted to none, but you want hanging. And again, you want to make sure you're double spacing. So when you go to create your entries, don't do this at the beginning of your essay. Wait till you get to your work status page. But you'll see it'll take the next line and indent it like that. That's the way it should look. Say we're over here, right? And also, you need to know the proper format for each entry. That's one thing we're going to look up. You don't want to try and memorize all the different possible ways you can do a works cited entry. You want to kind of learn the basics and then ask questions, or there's all kinds of online resources to look up, or you can also use a citation generator, but you're responsible for what that citation generator generates when you put it in your essay, right? So you want to make sure you understand what a source should look like. For the entries, basic formatting, this is just for a book right here. If you know the author, you want to start with the author's last name, comma, then the author's first name. If you have an initial, it'll come after that first name, then a period. If you kind of notice at all the other entries, if there's an author's name, that's how it starts off. If you have more than one author, the second author will be given in just regular order, first name, last name. If you have more than two authors, same thing. So the first author is going to be the last name, comma, first name. The rest of the authors in regular order. Then you're going to have here, this is the book title. It's italicized. You have the publisher and the year of publication. Up here, you're going to see there's no author for that article. There's no given author. So we're going to start with the article title, then talk about which book, or I guess this was a CD-ROM or something it came off of, and then the publisher and the year of publication. And you're going to kind of see that's kind of how every entry is going to work. If you have an author, you'll start with the author's name, the smaller unit. In this case, it's an article title. It could also be a web page. Then a larger unit is italicized, like a website, or a book, or a magazine, whatever. Then whatever information is required after that by MLA formatting. And that's where you might have to go to the Purdue OWL or some other resource to see how to do that. Also, these sample essays should help a little bit. And if you get kind of an oddball source, you should be asking me as well. But again, if you don't have an authored article or web page or whatever, you'll just start with that web page or article title. And again, it's in alphabetical order, so it's easy to find which one's being used. And that's basically what a works citus page should look like. And again, it's just a listing of the sources you're going to use in your essay. And the trick, if you can get your works citus page going correctly, when you start using sources in your essay, you're going to cite them using the first word on the works citus page and a page number. And if it's a website, you won't have a page number, so it'll just be the first word on your works citus page. So if your works citus page entry is right, the citations, the in-text citations, when you're showing us where your information is coming from, that's pretty easy to do. So here we have a short quote. While a family suffers, this is an essay on Alzheimer's, so it's not a happy topic. But she introduces the quote, gives the quote with quote marks. That's what a short quote should look like, which we'll talk about here in a second. But she's giving information from the source, and then at the end of that quote, she does her in-text citation. It's the first word on the works citus page. It's in parentheses. In this case, it's in quotation marks because it's an article title. If this was Susan Coping and that was her last name, it would not have quote marks around it. Same thing in the next little part. She's giving some data here, and it's clear that information is coming from somewhere, so I'm expecting a citation, and she provides one. Here the citation is McNamara, which again should be the first word on the works citus page. If this was a book, I'd expect a page number, but this isn't. So if I go to the works citus page, I should see this Coping source and this McNamara source on the works citus page. And there's Coping. I can tell because it was in quotation marks within the citation. So I'm looking for an article title, which is right here. And there's McNamara right there. And if I wanted to, I could go to that source and see where she got that information from. And that's the base. That's basically how MLA citation, MLA formatting works. You want your sources listed on a works citus page. You want them properly formatted so that when you go to cite them in your essay and you're using the sources in your essay, you're just going to use the first word on the works citus page and the page number. If you want to, you can give that first word on the works citus page in the introduction to the quote. Let me get there. She doesn't do that much in this essay, so give me a second. Here we go. Here, researchers Michael Castle, Dolores Thompson, and Matthew Nathan's report. She gives a quote. Here, this is coming from an actual book, a paper book, like we used in the good old days. So we have a page number here. That's page 37. But here's the first word on the works citus page put in the introduction to the quote, which is perfectly fine. But again, in the next line, she's talking about how long Alzheimer's takes to progress, and she's going to cite that information using the first word on the works citus page. So again, I should go to that works citus page, see a Castle and an Alzheimer's disease. And if we go down there, and there we go. There's Michael Castle. Even though she goes ahead and gives all three authors in the introduction, I'm looking for that first one, Michael Castle here. So I could go to page 37, open that up, see that short quote right there, and see exactly where she got her information from, right? Same thing with here. There's that Alzheimer's disease source. I could go to that source, find that information, and make sure she's using it correctly in her essay. That's how it works. If you're kind of wearing down a little bit, this is a good place to pause the video. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going a little bit and talk about different ways to use sources in your essay. So if you want to pause, now would be the time to do it. Alrighty. There are four different ways to use sources in your essay. You can do a short quote, a long quote, a summary, or a paraphrase. A short quote is probably what you're probably used to doing. A short quote is 3 or fewer lines, and it's a direct quote from a particular source, word for word, straight from the source. And to do a short quote, you want to make sure you introduce the quote. Don't make a quote its own sentence. Don't just stick it in there and expect the reader to understand what's going on. You want to incorporate it into your essay by introducing it. And this is exactly what's going on here. Researchers Michael Castle, Dolores Thompson, and Matthew Nathan's report. Short quotes get quote marks. They're encased in short quotes. I can't make them both highlight there. But you have the quote mark at the beginning, quote mark at the end of the quote. Then you have your citation. Then you have your period. But that's exactly what a short quote should look like. You want to introduce it, encase it in quote marks, have the citation, and you're good to go. Again, short quote is 3 or fewer lines within the essay. The long quote is 4 or more lines. Same thing. It should be word for word, directly from the source. So here we got Alzheimer's affects a person's memory and personality. She introduces the quote. Then we have a long quote, sometimes called a block quote. You want to tab that over twice, and it's 4 more lines. And again, word for word, and you want to cite that source when you use it. So again, she has 2. You can see a long quote pretty easily. If I just do that, you can't read it, obviously. But long quotes are the only ones that are blocked over like this. So that's obviously a long quote. It should be word for word from the source. Again, it should have an introduction, and it should have a citation. And that's what long quotes should look like. If you need to change things within a quote, you can use brackets to show an addition or a change to a quote. If you start watching news programs and they're quoting Donald Trump or Biden or whoever, and you start seeing these brackets around words, that means the news organization added that word or made a change to the quote in some way. But you still, when you do that, that's fine. Because sometimes if you do it word for word, it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't make grammatical sense or something with the rest of what you're doing. But you want to make sure you have that in brackets. You can't just change quotes and not show that change. The ellipses, the 3 dots, show an omission from a quote. So in this long quote, generally it should be word for word, but the writer's showing us, hey, I took a little bit of something out here. And again, you can take things out like that, but make sure you're not changing the meaning of the quote or anything. It might have just been some useless information or something there that you just like, I don't need to include that. And she shortened the quote up a little bit. And here she just did this to clarify what was going on there. So ellipses and brackets come in very handy with quotes, but you only use the ellipses and brackets within a short quote or a long quote to show the change or the addition or the omission. Those are kind of the easy ones. Summary is a third way you can use a source in an essay. Here's a good example of a summary right here. Summary is when you condense the material, you shorten it, and you do it in your own words and sentence structure. If you're just going to use their words, you're going to do a short quote or a long quote, right? But if you have like a big pages of not garbage, but important stuff you want to put in your essay, but it's just just maybe too wordy or it's just too long, and you're like, hey, I can do this in a sentence or two. Please do that. It's a good way to put information in your essay pretty quickly and not get your reader bogged down with some big, long, horrible quote that's hard to read. So right here, the disease takes 8 to 10 years to progress. Most people will succumb and eventually die from the disease. She cites that source. That's a summary. Obviously, it's not a short quote because there's no quote marks around it. It's not a long quote because it's not offset and it's not 4 more lines. So she's telling me, hey, I'm going to summarize some information for you in my own words and sentence structure, but you still got to credit that information for that source. So, particularly when you're getting into numbers and things like that, you might start doing summaries to kind of shorten it and kind of maybe you also have to kind of interpret a little bit with the summary because you're shortening it and taking some information out sometimes. So be careful there. When you summarize, you can't change the meaning of what the person's saying, but you're going to condense it in your own words and sentence structure. But again, you still have to cite it, right? Sometimes you also might want to use a what's called a signal phrase, where you say, according to one source, yada yada yada, then cite it to make it clear that you're moving into a summary or paraphrase. A paraphrase looks like the formatting for a summary and paraphrase look exactly the same. Again, summary is when you condense material in your own words and sentence structure. And there's another summary coming right here. It's kind of a short passage. It's only 2 sentences. So she might have had 2 pages of information here, just said, I can do that in 2 sentences, but I still need to credit that information. And that's why you see the citation there. Up here, looks like we have a paraphrase. A paraphrase is when you restate what the original says without leaving out any of the main points. A good example, if you're going to discuss brain surgery, a short quote, 3 or fewer lines is not going to cover an entire brain surgery. A long quote might be too technical. It might be just a huge old thing in doctor speak, and I'm just going to write in, on your essay. I don't understand what's going on here because I'm an English teacher, not a doctor. A summary may not cover it. If you shorten it and condense it, you might end up leaving a scalpel or some sponges in someone's head for the brain surgery. So you might have to paraphrase this when you restate and you keep all the main points of the original, but you put it in your own words and sentence structure. And this is hard. Paraphrase is hard because generally you already have the other person's words in your head, and it's hard to come up with your own words and sentence structure, and it gets kind of long. But it's a good tool to use. Again, when you're trying to describe something fairly technical, you need to do it in your own words and sentence structure, and you can't leave out any of the main points. So this is paraphrase right here. You can kind of tell it's kind of longer. She's not leaving out the main points. You'd have to go through the original to see that, but and it's incorporated into the essay. Again, you might want to start using signal phrases. It's kind of obvious here because you're starting a new paragraph with it. But you might want to say according to one source, then go into your paraphrase in your own words and sentence structure. But again, you're still getting this information from somebody, so you need to cite it there. So there's the first two authors on that source there, and the page numbers. And if you go to Cutler and Stramick on the works cited page, you'll see it there. Same thing with coping. I think we've already seen coping, right? So I can come down here, check the source of that. There he is. I could go to this source, check that paraphrase, make sure she didn't change the information. And if she didn't, she's good to go. So again, you have the short quote, the long quote, the summary, and the paraphrase, and that's how you're going to use sources in your essay. But again, you're noticing you have to cite them all. You have to document what you're doing. It has to be clear where your information is coming from. All right. If you're getting tired again, this is another good place to pause the video. Kind of just doing a long one here and put it all in one place for you. The next thing, let me get a drink of water. Next thing I want to go over is a sample essay, a sample career essay. And hopefully what you're going to start doing as you learn MLA formatting is you're going to be able to look at these sample essays and get a little more out of them and kind of see how they're working. Again, this is a sample essay. This is a dual enrollment student. He's wanting to go to UT for an engineering degree. Actually, he got accepted to Vanderbilt. So if you're reading this going like, man, this guy's a good writer, it's like, yeah, he's a smart guy. But he's going to follow the assignment that you've been given. You want to tell us, why you're interested in your particular career, kind of introduce exactly what career you're going into. Again, if you're going into nursing, what kind of nursing? Pediatric, NICU, there's all kinds of, you want to be a travel nurse, there's all kinds of different forms of nursing. So try and be as specific as possible. Same thing with engineering. Don't just say, I want to be an engineer. There's all kinds of different engineers. Particularly with engineering, some areas are increasing the job growth. Some areas are decreasing because they're able to put these send these overseas and do it cheaper, right? So you want to be as specific as possible, so your research can be as specific as possible. He's got to go ahead and define what a mechanical engineer does. But once he does that, he needs to cite that source. So here we have a summary, probably, maybe a paraphrase. It's hard to tell. They're formatted the same, so it's kind of more the author's intent more than the reader's perception there. But he gives the definition of mechanical engineering, and he cites that source. So I should be able to go to the works cited page, see that mechanical, and see what source he's using for that essay. For that information. And there it is right there. First word on the works cited page. I can go to that source there and make sure he used it correctly. He's not doing anything too fancy there with that source, so he's probably in good shape there. But he's going to start getting into different information here, and he needs to make sure he credits his sources. And you can kind of see that's what's starting to happen there. Starting to talk about his educational requirements, all the courses he needs to take, and talk about what it takes to be an engineer, right? But every time you see one of these citations, that's him saying, hey, I got this information from somewhere. So this little short quote and this summary paraphrase, he's citing those. Doing a good job of making sure we know where that information is coming from. I'm not going to read this essay to you. You can read faster than I can talk. But eventually he's going to get to his academic plan, and he's going to put it in as a table. You want to label it as Table 1 and tell us what the plan's for is, what kind of degree. If you're Northeast State, it's going to be probably an associate degree or a certificate. If you're a dual enrollment student, you might be moving towards a four-year school or whatever. So this is for BS in Mechanical Engineering from UT Knoxville. And he goes through and gives all the information. You're going to see he doesn't have his English classes listed because he's doing that as a dual enrollment student. And at the end of the table, he's going to cite the source of that table. And again, hopefully you're kind of looking at this sample essay, kind of seeing how he's doing his citations and stuff, and you're going to kind of copy using your own information, hopefully. But again, you can kind of see he's giving information about cost now. Make sure it's clear where information is coming from. Looks like a paraphrase there. Okay, he has it all cited here. Be careful. Like here, he has some information about pay, but it's not cited. He's not plagiarizing. It's coming from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but he doesn't quite give the citation here. He probably lost a few points on this one here. It's not clear. Make sure it's clear where information is coming from. You don't want to go from a quote to a summary and not cite the quote, for example. Here he's kind of doing a little summary about the pay and about where he can work, and then he comes down here and actually gives a citation. That's not quite correct. He should have the citation here, even though it's probably the same source. But other than that, he's doing pretty well. He introduces that long quote, tabs it over twice, word for word, and gives a citation there. So it's clear where all the information is coming from. He's doing the summaries, the paraphrases, short quotes, long quotes, making sure he has good information. But hopefully, as you kind of look over the sample essay, you can kind of see how all that's working. Here you kind of see he's using the brackets to clarify something within a quote, and of course he's citing the information in that short quote. So as you're reading these, hopefully starting to see the short quotes, the long quote, then summary paraphrases. Again, summary paraphrases, when you look at it in an essay, they kind of look kind of the same. Generally, summaries should be shorter. Paraphrases are a little more longer information, a little more detailed information quite often. But you can kind of see he doesn't have any authored sources in here, which is kind of interesting. When we get to the medical essay, I'm going to expect to see the author there. Maybe not so much for the career essay, right? Just kind of coming from websites and stuff. When you get to that Bureau of Labor Statistics site, that's how you cite it right there on your works cited page. Use this. do this. Kind of use this essay. You don't want to copy it. You're probably not going to. I don't know how many of us want to be mechanical engineers anyway. A lot of math there, right? But again, he was into math and science, and this is what he wants. He wants to go work at NASA. So good for him, and hopefully he's going to succeed. But use this sample essay. Use the other sample essay if it helps you as well. And hopefully this helps you kind of get started with MLA formatting. I know it's kind of a longer video, but I want to kind of put everything in one place so you can kind of go back to it and reference it when you need to. If you have any questions, be sure and let me know. And we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.